This is the 2022 Sizzix Chapter 1. And, you know, I think what's really great about this, like I said, is this is it. It's a nice assortment of designs. We've got everything from some framelits, some colorize, some cool words, and of course 3D. And I want to take you through, I'm going to talk about the dies themselves, talk about the designs, we're going to get into the makes, we're going to talk about all sorts of things. So just sit back and hopefully you are inspired and motivated. All right. So here is the first one. I think I'll probably just slide these off camera. There we go. Then I can just kind of bring them in. We'll talk about one SKU at a time. So this is the first one, and these are stacked tiles hearts. Now you might look at a SKU like this really and go rolling your eyes and be like, serious, Captain Obvious? We have done nested shapes since the dawn of time, since dinosaurs roamed the earth. But listen,
Captain Obvious is here today.
I agree with that. I do. I've always liked nested dies. I think they provide a lot of versatility for a maker, especially when they start with, you know, larger shapes, usually, you know, nested ovals or squares or circles for those large things. But what this particular SKU, stacked tiles, this is actually another SKU in a series of tiles I've done, I think, over the last couple of years. Now, Sizzix has those available, but I will say that those stacked tiles are probably going to start retiring. You're going to start seeing those designs going away because this is really the last stacked tiles in the series. I don't have another shape coming in that collection. But let me just explain what these are. They are a framelit, which means it's going to be an open die. But unlike just a nested set of dies where you get one each of a size, what makes these tiles unique is that you actually get 5 of each. And so let me just bring in the dies here just to show you what I'm talking about. Put that off to the side, put that over here, and just show you the other shapes in the series, right? So we have hexagons, squares, circles, rectangles, ovals, triangles, and of course hearts. Now I have mine on the magnet sheets just so you can see the cool part of that. But again, you're getting 5 each of that. So if you wanted to do multiples, let's just say you were going to do a make, let's just say for Valentine's Day, right? Or you wanted hearts, and you're like, I really like this heart. You can then place 5 of them down and run them through and cut 5 of the same size, right? Or if you wanted to create some frames. So I'll just talk about the hearts specifically. So again, these should all be available, but like I said, I've heard that these are going to start retiring, all of these shapes as they slow down. Because like I said, they've been out for a couple of years and things just can't stick around forever. But I wanted to let you know. So if you like this concept, and maybe this was the one die that made you understand the concept, then off you go.
It totally made me understand.
Yeah, because Mario prepped this.
It was really fun.
Yeah, he was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool that you can do this. So the benefit of that, obviously, is that you get 5 different sizes of a shape. And that's just how that is with all of the stacked tiles, okay? So you get those, and these are the new hearts. The cool thing about it, of course, is that you can just do the solids. There you go, just place that down. You can put it over pattern paper, a photo, regular cardstock, whatever you choose. But you can also create different variations of that, meaning you can take that die and you can also place the next die inside it and cut a frame. Now, for the shapes, like the hexagons, the squares, all the other ones, if you stack those and get a shape, you would have an even border all the way around the design. But for the sake of the heart, because I wanted the heart to stay the same, we kind of got some really cool, unique borders around this. So this would be the large one with the second one laid in. You run it through and now you get a frame. And then, of course, you'd have that positive piece. Or if you take the large one and put the next size down inside, and so on, and so on. And you can do that for each one. Obviously, just taking the next size down or skipping one, even creating kind of that smaller one. Those remind me of those little cookies, which I like. And as you go down, of course, obviously the assortment or the ability that you have is going to vary. But then once you create these, or if you wanted to create these, you even have this option. So if you kind of look vertically, if you created each frame, you could essentially put this into this then fits in here, this would fit in here, this would fit in here, and you can actually have all different colors go all the way down. That's a typical nested die. But you're still looking at this going, okay, I get it, I can do that with the other ones that I have. That is correct. However, could you do something like this? Meaning, could you create a card front with a single nested die? Well, yeah, but you're only going to get one of each shape. The cool thing of stacked tiles is that I can take this and I can create a card front using multiples of the same size because I'm getting 5 each. And how you do that, it's actually quite, you can take, if you have sticky grid's the easiest way for me, I think, to do it, because you can place the sticky grid. It's just a reusable sticky. I mean, it will eventually wear out, but you put it on your cutting pad. You decide the size of your paper. In this case, I knew I was doing a card front, so I just used this area here. Then you're going to place your dies blade side up, and you can move them around. You can position them. I love the fact that the grid is going to allow me to make sure the hearts aren't wonky. You can place them as close as you want, as long as they're not overlapping. Okay, stick those down, and then once they're placed, you can take your cardstock panel, place it down, run it through the die cut, and you die cut. And of course, you get the frame, and then you could pop all these out, and you would have all of these hearts cut out of watercolor cardstock that you can use for your making. So there really isn't any waste there, but I love the fact that I can cut out a card front in a single pass. And if you're really careful on the dismount, right, meaning you get to just carefully lift this off and pull these out, you can use this layout again and again. I also love the fact that you can use this for stencils. If you have Yupo or any type of reusable substrate, I like to do this out of Yupo because Yupo is synthetic, it's plastic, and I can wipe it off. But yeah, you can cut out your own stencils, well, really with any die, but I like the fact that if you wanted, say, a heart stencil, which many did after watching the live last week with Valentine's, they're like, oh, we want a stencil with all the different hearts. You can make that, because if you cut it out of Yupo, Yupo will be used again and again and again, right? It's pretty cool. Now, the benefit of this, of course, from a card front aspect, right? This is an alcohol ink panel, just on some sparkle. I love the fact that I can place this over a panel and just done. Really simple in a single pass. I also love that little groove that it creates. We tried to create very, very thin framelits, so you'll see that the blade is on the inside with the little outside border, because I wanted the piece that's going to cut out to be totally usable. And I really like that little step down on the cutout, and all of the stacked tile dies do this. So that's really the benefit of that. So whether you're doing a standard A2 or if you're going to do a slimline card, that's the beauty. You can position these to whatever your card design or style is going to be. That's how you understand tiles. And you know, sometimes it's about seeing that to truly get it, because you can see this and just assume, okay, it's another nested. But those are the stacked tile hearts, the last one in the stacked tile series, and well, a good one. I do. I like that. I like those hearts. I like that design. All right. Excellent. So next up for, well, Valentine's is a colorize. Now, I love colorize because I like the ability to create a very dimensional or whimsical look. This one, this is Lovestruck, and I like that. 2 hearts and a single arrow. So I want to call that out, because when you look at the packaging, yes, I designed this where I cut the arrow to make it look like it's going through, but the die itself, you're actually getting a full arrow. So I'll show you really what you're getting with that. Great thing about colorize, very easy to do, because it tells you, you know, reds 1, 2, and 3, or whether this die needs to be cut out of white. You can stack them, you can do foam, you can use adhesive back, any type, and you can easily layer these. There are always videos to support colorize as well. If any die is a colorize, Sizzix has on their YouTube channel kind of digital virtual renderings of a colorize being assembled. So if you often look at this and you're like, how do these pieces go together? I mean, I see all the colors on the die, because colorize, the color name is actually engraved on the back of each die, so you'll know which colors to use. And that, of course, is to represent the package. You can do this out of anything, meaning if it says red 1, 2, and 3, you can do it out of blue 1, 2, and 3, or you can still do it out of watercolor paper and just ink it. But if you need help assembling, you can always go to Sizzix YouTube channel. So it's not on my YouTube channel, it's on theirs. And you'll see a colorize, it'll have the die name, and then you'll kind of see this digital rendering where it shows all the colors of what you're cutting and then how to assemble it. What I like is, of course, you're going to get 2 different size hearts. They're not connected, right? So you can either have a small one or a large one, and then you get this cool arrow. And this arrow can be used for so many different things. It's just a great design. As you can see, you can cut it apart if you want to stack all those pieces together. It's just fun. I've always wanted to do hearts, but really, what can you do with a heart other than, you know, there's cartoon ones, there's kind of lacy ones, there's standard ones like I did with the stacked, but I really like that this had kind of that dimensional aspect to it that colorize can provide. Right? Really cool. I love the little cutouts too. Really trying to save time in how much time it takes to do colorize, to be honest. And speaking of colorize, and there was so many sneak peeks and people were talking about this one, This is Gladys. Now, Gladys, well, she's wonderful, she's sassy, and Gladys was actually inspired by last year when we introduced Kitsch Flamingo in the distress range, and people are like, you need a flamingo die. And I'm like, really? I searched everywhere and I couldn't. Yes, you could find a very typical flamingo, but I'm like, I want a flamingo with a little bit of sass. And then when I saw this artist that did for Gladys, I'm like, there she is. There she is. Totally.
She's
like,
so fun.
okay, so the fun thing about, of course, colorized, pretty large scale, right? She'll fit on a number 8 tag or on a card front, but the great thing of colorized is the ability to layer. So even down to the lashes, the eyes, even the detail in the beak. These are not the only fussy pieces we really try to do now on colorized has to do with eyes or features that have to be pretty tiny. But if you look at the body, like that color, that pink, that's just a cutout from that top layer revealing the base layer. So we're also kind of working in different areas. Usually we work light to dark, but sometimes we'll work in reverse. Even the little detail of, like, look at that little kneecap, little knobby. So fun and cute. And you're going to see from the makes there's some great inspiration using Gladys. Just awesome. She's really good.
So cute.
Yeah, just so much fun. Absolutely love that. So there you go. There's the flamingo die. Although it's a year late, it's still good. And you're going to be surprised, I think, by some of these releases because you're like, wait a minute, is Tim Holtz gone soft on us? Is this cutesy? Nah. Listen, there's cutesy, but there's so much potential for what you can do with a die that sometimes people think is just cutesy. And so I hope you stick around for the whole live and you'll see that. This is Bunny Games. And Bunny Games, yes, it's cute, but I love Easter time. And Easter definitely brings me back to my childhood. It's a candy holiday, so I love that as well. But this is just fun because I wanted to create little characters. Last year when we did the carrot bunny, I couldn't believe how many times that little bunny appeared throughout the year, actually. And I think maybe it was its simplicity or maybe there's just something to do with bunnies. But a shout out to Lisa, who works at Sizzix and helps me take all the ideas and turn them into designs. And she often gives a lot of input to the designs of things maybe to add that I didn't think of. And she definitely had input on this one because I fell in love with these bunnies simply because I liked their look. I liked that they had some layers to them. It's not a colorized because it's not too complicated. It's actually just a base and some accent pieces. But she was able to kind of transform that where you get the full bunny. You get this one, which is really essentially just a bunny head and these two little paws right there. Some eggs that are easy to do. These would be great to use with alcohol ink, right? To do the background and then have that top layer. A couple little flowers. And she's like, you know, you need to add some elements. So she's like, add some flowers or add this little banner. Kind of turn it into a party because it was really about hide and seek. And so shout out to Lisa. She really does have such a great impact on how these designs end up finished from where they start. Because sometimes, guys, the ideas are rough, really rough. And where do you see the makes for this? You're going to be quite impressed with the style and design and versatility of something that you might look at and go, oh my gosh, it's pastel and cute. I have no idea what's going on. You'll see some grungy bunnies. I assure you that. You will. Okay? You'll see it in this live. So a great die, so many different elements to it. This one is shipping a little bit behind the rest of the chapter release, but I still think it's probably going to catch up eventually. So it might be in the next week or so for this particular SKU. Again, there's delays everywhere, and we make the best of it. We do what we can, right? Exactly. That is what we do. So this next one, this colorized Papercut chicks, very cute. They just make me laugh. Sometimes, you know, when I'm designing things for different brands, whether it's stamps or Sizzix, like I said, I don't draw, so I'm always looking out to license art. And when I see stuff, if it just makes me laugh and smile, I think there's got to be some potential for these. What I like about this, they kind of do remind me of just cute little chickens, little peeps. I think they're hilarious how their color is really simple. The paper cut ability, the reason I call them paper cut is because their contour is definitely more chopped, like you would cut it out with scissors. They don't have all the nice smooth edges, and I like that about them. You can see with the colorized, it's very easy, kind of yellow 1, 2, and 3 to stack that up. Even that egg, all of these elements are individual, right? So you've got that chick, that egg, and you've got this base. And you'll often notice on the dies, especially for those that, if you have the luxury of going into your local store and find that, awesome. But if you don't, you know, this often tells you kind of what pieces are in the die set and what are separate. That's really important stuff to kind of figure out, because let's just say, for example, you had Papercut chicks and you used them because you can use this one going this way, this way. They could look at each other. You can create several ones, or maybe you just wanted some eggs. Maybe you wanted these to be Easter eggs, right, where they're small. But you can also utilize several different dies in a release, you know. So for example, you know, maybe Gladys was your jam, but you had this one as well. Well, instead of doing this as total grass, you can leave this outer edge maybe green, and then these two layers blue, and then Gladys could essentially stand in there and she could be standing in water, right? So you can still use dyes from one set in the next when you're combining these. I think that would be, just always remember to look at what you have and see if there's certain components or elements that you can mix and match, not only in a release, but maybe even what you have. So I think they're great. Real simple pieces to do. And then when it came to simplicity, I wanted to have a background that would kind of support that. So this simple plaid is nice. It doesn't have any perfectly straight lines. They're a bit wonky. They definitely have a little variation in thickness as well, right? So you can see it can go from thin to thick. Just a cool plaid. You're going to see how the makers transform this in so many different things, from a cage to a nest to a background. I always think having background dies that have a very strong texture to them will be useful to any maker, because you can see that as it turns, it does give it a different effect or different appearance, because it's not a very cohesive plaid. I like randomness. I embrace my wonkiness. I think it's good. But yeah, again, strong background, very key. But as I was playing around, in addition to, of course, Valentine and Easter, springtime is really important. And this die, man, when I saw this art, I said to Lisa, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool? Because this is a watercolor, right? This was a beautiful watercolor of this bird and egg. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could kind of take that and break it down into a die? It's amazing. And any of the makers that are already made with this, I know they will agree, because it is designed so simple. It looks incredibly complex, but really you're building from this dark layer on up. And these pieces, it's literally, I think, maybe 4 or 5 layers and you're done. The eye starts at the bottom layer, like your bottom layer is black. And as you build up, before you know it, you have this watercolor. And you'll understand from the makes that it creates a beautiful watercolor vibe. I try to keep the packaging as simple as possible. So usually I'll use a solid color cardstock, because I don't want to ever intimidate someone to say, well, I don't watercolor, so I don't want to do that die. It looks beautiful with solid papers as well, but when you see it colored, whether using inks or oxide, just amazing. It's a pretty massive bird. I mean, he's definitely a statement piece that can be used, but you'll see again from the makes that it could be used a lot of different ways. And then a speckled egg, again, inspired by a distress color. People said, you need some egg dyes. And I'm like, well, who's going to buy a set of just eggs? So you can see I've kind of thrown in a few different eggs. The Papercut chicks have more of a smaller egg. Obviously, the Bunny Games has the Easter egg, and this one is more of that speckled egg. And the beauty of Colorize, of course, is we can layer, we can reveal the colors underneath to add some of that detail. So this egg, of course, could be on its side. It just paired with the bird, I thought. But what a great card if you just did the egg and maybe you did, you know, something botanical and you had 2 or 3 eggs across your make. But a very cool die. You'll see a lot of the pieces are really big. That's what's great about this particular one, that all of these little cutouts, believe it or not, they're connected except for these highlights, right? But even that one highlight is connected. There's a highlight, and there's a highlight, and there's one. But all these other layers, you'll see, we really try to make it very simple and easy to make. Beautiful bird.
Questions on the paper.
Okay.
Just what paper are you using?
Oh, I use a variety of cardstock. You know, sometimes I'll use Sizzix cardstock. They have a great assortment of colors in there. They have so many different packs of cardstock. Now, their cardstock is an 80 pound. So I like to use it to build dies because it doesn't add a lot of bulk, right? You'll see some that I use my Ideology craft stock, right? Old and new, because the old craft stock used to have texture. Some of the new craft stock is smooth. So that's really the papers I use. There's just so many different colors that you can do, but I would say the bulk of this, when you see a lot of different colors for Colorize, I kind of stick to Sizzix paper because they have so many different tones and colors in their papers. A lot of the weird ones, the in-betweens. And then if you see something really vintage or grungy, then it's often the Ideology craft stock. So it's a little mix and match. Some have texture. You can see some is even minimal texture and some is smooth. So I don't even bother with like, oh, I need it to all be matchy-matchy. I think it just adds to the whole effect of creating a make. But there again, let's say you don't want to bother with color paper, right? If you're just one of those makers, you're like, look, I am not going to, go in and have a whole stash of paper. Okay, you can still cut this out of white, just white cardstock, and ink in the color for the colorize. So if it's like brown 1, 2, 3, and 4, cut those out of white and then ink those pieces that say brown 1 a color of brown, brown 2 a different color of brown, brown 3 a different color of brown. So you can do your coloring if you're doing inking or blending after you cut it as well. So there's many options to do colorize.
Cool, thanks.
Which brings me to the next one now that I talked about ink. That was a great segue, Mario. That was really good.
You're welcome.
Colorize wood grain. Now, believe it or not, this one, we've attempted this, I would probably say, for at least 4 years, at least. But because I wanted a realistic wood grain, it was incredibly complicated to do when we started out colorize. In fact, it was going to be the first in the colorize series, but it was just too complicated. Of course, then instead we went with a 50p Santa, but that's a whole nother story. It's history. But now that we, I think, have perfected colorize and the ability to layer from the back up, we've nailed it on this one. So I absolutely love these. So wood grain is 2 planks. Okay, that's essentially what you're cutting, but don't be limited to just their rectangular shape. You'll see from the makes. They're so easy to do. Now again, for this one, because I wanted more of an authentic look, I chose to do inky backgrounds, right? I just went in with distress and I did my inky backgrounds first. So I did one that was like, I'll just call it brown 1, which was darker. So I did it in 4 different shades. It doesn't necessarily need to be light to dark. Some of them, you can see I did more of a gray background. But instead of using regular paper, I felt that this wood grain was best represented in some type of inky distress paper. This is how easy it is. You're going to see there is a solid die. So there is a foundation that you're going to build on. That's what simplified all this. Then that's the same foundation you're going to use for either plank design. And the dies are labeled there. It'll be like, I don't know if it's called plank 1 or board 1, but it's still going to be, it's going to isolate which one is going to be 1, 2, and 3 for the first one, or 1, 2, and 3 for the second one. All of these lines are connected in the dies. So the dies themselves, I'll just open this up just so you can see. Because really, we want to do the work in the design part to help minimize the work in the maker part, right? Sometimes you just have to do it, right? Makers need to make. So it's not like everything can just come in a box already done, but we really try to simplify it. So for example, this is going to be your base. It's just a regular solid, and it says, well, base. So it could be whatever base color. Then you'll see on the back, oh, panel. See, panel, plank, same thing, panel. So the panel 1. So I'm going to sort all my panel 1. So panel 1, and there's going to be another piece that says panel 1. There you go. You see that? It's engraved right on the back of the die. Then these would all be panel 2. And it's going to just, depending on which design you want, we start with the base, and it's going to be 1, 2, and 3, right? So when you cut the pieces, so for example, when you cut brown 1, every single thing you see, even though it's so crazy, it's all connected. You glue it down in one piece. All these are cutouts. These little pieces are just cutouts. Same thing, brown 2, everything is connected. Although it looks absolutely chaotic, like, oh, I'm gonna have to glue down all these little bacon strips. No, it's all connected. The only thing that's gonna be separate are your highlights. And quite honestly, you could get away with not doing the highlights if these were too bothersome. They are very skinny, but my recommendation is either use collage medium as your glue because you won't see it, or just put adhesive on the back of your cardstock first, right? Whether you run it through a Xyron, put some adhesive on it. This way when you cut it, you can stick these down because they are pretty thin little details, but you'll see that those highlight strips are really nice and so easy. And again, there's a video that shows you kind of the order, but I love how simple this die is designed, right? But the detail and the depth, I mean, hello. Look at that. Absolutely crazy. You'll see it in the makes. Very cool. So that's our wood grain colorize. Excited to finally figure it out. And that's the thing also when designing. Look, I'll admit, not every idea is a good one. I could have the best ideas, but if we can't make it to where it's doable, then forget it. It's not worth doing. There'll be a time that it is. Okay? So the next up, I'm really excited. So I'm just going to kind of share a little bit. This is the first one in a series of 4 this year. Okay, this is bold text. kind of inspired by bold tidings that I did for Stampers Anonymous. I did a set of bold kind of statements, and these stamps were really beneficial because as a maker, whether you're doing cards or journals, whatever, to be able to put a statement down at once was really good. Now, I've done a lot of alphanumeric dies with Sizzix, alphabets that have multiple letters that you can spell things out. But the cool thing about this is it's already done for you. So this is bold text 1. There's going to be another one in chapter 2, and there's going to be one for Halloween and one for Christmas. So kind of keep that in mind if you like it. Here's what's great about this particular die set. The width of all of that text is the same. It is standard width. So you can see that I wanted to maintain that because these would fit on a tag, a number 8 tag. So if you're a tag maker, but it also fits on a card front. The text itself is all on one die. Okay, there you go. I don't even need to open that. You can see that. So whether it's love you, whatever that is, it's on one die with a minimal halo around it. So when you put it on a card front, it doesn't cast a significant bruise. Every die, because of pressure, is going to give you a deboss in your paper. Especially the thicker the paper, the more impression you get. So if you're cutting out on thinner paper, you might not notice that. But if you're doing thick paper, like this is my Distress heavy stock in craft, so it's 130 pound. So the pressure, it's going to cut, but it's going to leave a little deboss. So I wanted that deboss to also look nice. So that's why we framed that statement very, very clean. So there's Make a Wish. Thank you so much. Happy birthday to you. Love this. Focus on the good. Love you. Hello there. And best day ever. Now you'll see on the words, it does knock out the letters, but when you cut them, I still wanted to include that in the die. Meaning, even though I designed these as dropout dies, you're going to still have those letters, and you'll see from the makers that you utilize those letters. So I didn't skip on the fact that even though it was an R or a P or an O, I still wanted to put that blade in there because you're going to get like a legit R or legit P or A or any of the letters to use on another make, okay? But this way, if you ran this through, not only do you get this, but you also have happy birthday to you already cut out to use on another card. So you can use these for shakers, for windows, all sorts of things. But I wanted to keep that width consistent. It's just the height that varies depending on the text, and that's why some of the words are bigger, some are small, but I don't know, they're fun and super easy. But let me point something out that I actually noticed last night when I was prepping. So this package, which is shipped, it's out there, that's what it is. Some people save the packaging, some don't, but I wanted to point out that this packaging is missing one of the quotes that's in the die set, right? Can you see the best day ever? It's there in the top, but it's just not shown here, or it's shown here, but it's in the set, okay? So it's there, it's just, if you're looking for like, oh, where's that one? He said, you know, best day ever, it's not here. It is, it's in this. I would assume that we'll just do a running change in the packaging. I totally missed it because I looked to approve it, but I think all these words, my eyes were just like, yep, it's there, but it really wasn't. So just know that that die is included, even though you may not see it on the front of the packaging, it's there, okay? So.
And why? Because it's the best day ever.
That's right. And I embrace my imperfection. It is what it is. You just own it, right? When something happens, it's like, don't try to hide it. You just do it. Okay. Then we talk about 3D. Now, I'm going to say this. I need to do a shout out to Ryan. Ryan is the guy that I work with at Sizzix who does 3Ds. And these, I will say, collectively are years. This one, this doily, I don't even know. I would have to say, I don't even know when we first started 3D. Was it 5 years ago, 6 years ago? However long ago it was, this was the first design I wanted to do, and we couldn't do it. It was impossible. We tried so many times for years to figure it out, and it just didn't work. So now that we, I think, have really honed in on 3D technology for embossing, it was time to pull out the big guns. So what I said to Ryan is, all right, and we started these because these have been in the works. Like, what I want to do on all of these is I want to play around with new ideas, new concepts of how we work with 3D, okay? One is going to be, which I just love the whole style of it. This is a damask pattern. Now, what I wanted to do on this one is I wanted to play with curve. I wanted to have peaks, so you're going to see in the detail the highest of peaks that we've done for 3D. Like, look at those dots in there. But then I wanted to play with ripple or contour, meaning when we raise something, do we have the ability to not only raise it, but then also ripple it without being a deboss? So if you look here, you can see kind of that rippling in the paper. So it's not just like an innie and an outie. You can see that little divot right in there. So we really played with rippling the paper in addition to creating high points and low points. Now, because of that, because a 3D folder has so much detail, you have to be careful with the kind of cardstock. You have to be careful with how many times you run it through the machine, or it could just slice it up, right? So this is 130 pound. This one seems to hold up really well. Watercolor cardstock, 118, that also holds up. But if you start getting thinner, right, if you're doing like, say, a 60-pound cardstock and you run it through and you're like, hey, it's just ripping everything, well, it's just because the cardstock is too thin. A way around that, if you didn't want to get thicker cardstock, is to actually emboss maybe 2 sheets of that thinner cardstock at one time, and then it kind of diffuses the pressure, but you would still get the great detail. Isn't it stunning? So I love that when you look at 3D, you can kind of look at it 2 different ways. You can look at this as like a deboss relief, or you can look at all the details that are raised. Where do you see the makes for this? It's super elegant. I like that, you know, I wanted a damask that didn't have necessarily the pineapple shape inside. I just love the look of it, and you'll see that there's so much variety and versatility in that. Then we have doily. Now doily, well, doily is doily. It's just a doily. But it is one where we wanted to not only use the detail, right? But I wanted to create some negative space. I'm like, okay, what if we just did a folder where, you know, historically I just like to do folders where it's an Oliver pattern. But if you're a card maker, and what if we wanted to create something where we left a little landing space that you can do a stamp, you can do a die cut sentiment, you can put a sentiment strip, whatever you wanted to do. That's what we did for this one. But more importantly, instead of just having that raised design, what I asked Ryan to do is, can you achieve the look of that crocheted doily? Can we see the threads in there? And the answer is yes. I mean, seriously, guys, take a look at that. So detailed and so raised around the edge. And the other thing that was important, because whenever you go from detail to nothing, you often risk the pressure of the machine kind of fan folding this paper, right? Or wrinkling it. And we wanted to have kind of a smooth dismount as well. So that is all the detail. The great thing, of course, is because it's a corner, you can decide, oh, I want this in the bottom corner and I'll do this, or I want it in the side and do this, or I want it here and do this. So you do have options of whatever your perspective layout is going to be on this. But I think the detail, man, that's where it is for me. It's all that little bit that Ryan does, that little magic, instead of just smoothing out a line, because, well, honestly, that's the easiest and the most affordable way to do it, because even in manufacturing, they have to make sure that all that material is injected into all those places to capture it. Beautiful, right? Whoa, so good, so good. And then we have quilted. Now quilted is cool. It's kind of a combination of leather and stitching, because I wanted to play with several things. I wanted to play with the detail and stitching we're able to get. How small of a texture can we get? And can we still create contour? So it's like what we learned here and what we learned here, can we put it all together and create something else? So take a look at this paper. So first you'll see when the light catches it that yes, each of those diamonds are puffed up, quilted, if you will, right? You can see that on this side they kind of go in, but on this side when the light hits it, each one is actually puffed. Each one has a very detailed leather texture to it. And then you have the detail of those stitches. So if you look closely, they're not just lines, right? They're actually the threads from that art that we used. So they're different sizes. They have some of those striations going through the thread. I mean, the detail of this one is ridiculous because we kind of captured everything. We're like, what we learned here, let's see if we can put everything together. Push the highs, push the lows, push the texture, push the detail, and push the contour. So again, a shout out to Ryan, because sweet mother of glory, that's just embossing at its best. That is 3D. And you know, as with any technology, it just gets better. The more you do it, the better it gets, right? I mean, look at that. So good. Ah, so good. Okay. So the thing about these 3D embossing folders, and you're going to see from the makes, you can do some very simple things to kind of bring them out, right? The first one is going to be doily. Because it has such a smooth area on the folder, it's very easy to open your folder, ink the area, and run it through. That's all these are. This is Distress Oxide inked on the folder, you ink on the flattest side, meaning where your image is recessed, that's the side of the folder you ink, by rubbing the ink pad directly on there. Give it a couple mists of water. Don't hose it down. Just give it a couple mists because we want that ink to stay wet, and you run it through. This way the ink goes in, and this is uninked area, and that's what makes it white. So whatever color paper you use, that's going to be the color of the doily. Does that make sense? Because the ink is going in. Now, it's a very easy one if you wanted to go in. You could fussy cut this. In fact, I know Susie did in her make. You could cut that out. But it's just nice because I love that panel. And you can see just from different colors, pumice stone, antique linen, little speckled egg, right? And what I like about using oxide is I do like kind of the variation that I'm going to get in the background color. I've done this with archival before. Archival doesn't have as much play, but it's also very effective, but very stunning and very simple, right? By having that whatever color. Again, if this was craft, you could do oxide and then the doily would be brown and your ink would be debossed. Again, inking directly on the folder, a couple of mists, and off you go on this one. For this, I used watercolor cardstock, distressed watercolor cardstock, because I knew that I wanted my color to move, and watercolor cardstock allows your color to move. So that's what I think helped fill in the gaps just a bit. For cracked leather, well, you know I'm going to get my grunge on, right? I'm going to create just a really cool, grungy leather. So this, if you watch the live that we did for Valentine's Day, I used similar colors that I do for Woodgrain. You know, you'll see some brushed corduroy spray, a little bit of oxide, some hickory smoke. Do my ink like normal, emboss it, right? But then to bring out the highlights, as we talked before, this one has a little bit of distressed resist spray over the top. That's what's giving it that shine. And then to highlight these little stitches, right? Because now you can't do the whole brayer trick like I do for Woodgrain, because we're not dealing with one raised level. We're dealing with contour. So if you brayer this, it's going to hit the center of these diamonds, and the threads probably not going to be what you want, right? Because you can see the same height. So just taking your little ink pad, I just took my distressed mini ink pad, drug it across, smudged it with my finger because the resist spray was already on it. So it took a lot of that color off right away. And so I did swipe, smudge, right? And by using distressed ink, it gave me enough time to take some of it off. But as you can see, a significant amount grabbed onto it where I wanted it to. And well, I love the effect. So really fun. So many possibilities that we can do with 3D. Very cool. So let's get into the makes. Let's get into the makes, shall we? I love it. So let's talk about the makes and makers. What I wanted to do this year was something very different for the makes and the makers, and a shout out to the makers for completely supporting this concept. And I think there's so much good that has come of this. So believe it or not, we have for this particular release close to 70 different makes. Now, historically, they've been part of live, and lives go on for 3-4 hours of makes, and the makes just kind of get sped up and things get lost. And so what we are doing this year for the brand is for every product release with the brand, there are live makers, which are makers that make and send in for live, and social makers, which are makers that also make, but their projects are exclusive to social, which means in order for you to see them, you need to go and see them on their social accounts. Now, the makers, all the makers, whether they're live or social, they will be sharing on Instagram today. They will be posting their makes between 11 and 12 Pacific, and then there will be a blog post on timholtz.com that feature all of the makes for the release, right? So if you're watching this on replay, or if you're like, well, how do I see everything? You can go right to timholtz.com. You'll see all of the makers there. All of their photos will be clickable to take you right to Instagram. Some of them will be doing blog posts, some of them won't. But that is going to allow not only so much more inspiration, but it allows more makers to be part of a launch, right? Because not everybody can commit to, 5 projects or 6 projects. Some only do 1 or 2 for a launch. So I'm really happy with how this has worked out. And I'm excited to see the social makes, because those are makes you're not going to see in this live. So it's like a whole nother gift right after the party. No kidding. It's like an after party. No doubt. That's really what it is. Social makers, you are the after party guys, which we know. I mean, not to discredit this, but sometimes the after party, well, there you go. That's it. All right. So these first makes, this is using stacked hearts. And I love how the makers really kind of came out with these projects, because it shows that die at its best, right? Why do we want multiples of a shape? Okay. So well, let's just start with this card right here. This one, Paula created this one. I love how beautiful those little watercolored hearts are. And you can see here by having the ability to run 5 dies through at a time, you can simply watercolor a panel. You can fill it up with as many dies as you want, run it through, and then you have all of these pieces to just adhere to a card. I also like the fact of using that die to cut out that window of the card and doing some stitching. And then there's the heart inside, right? Isn't that cute? What a great way to use design. So again, when you look at those stacked tiles, you're like, what? Why do I want those? That is why, because if you had a nested die set that only had one, you're going to be running that, just this die alone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times to create that, right? This time, I think it's only 10, because I didn't count that one. So that's just going to be running it through twice to get those minis. Beautiful. Love the detail, and I think that's so clever to have that little solid heart inside, and there's a little ideology sticker in there. Cute card. I think whenever Keisha does cards, just her style and color is so cool. So Keisha created this. First, let's just talk about the plaid in the background, right? Because when you have that plaid, I'll just show you from just when you're looking at a card itself, right? Sometimes just using a die in the same color as the card base, that's why I'm trying to show you, it appears as if you've embossed the card front, right? Because it's the same color, so you think, oh, that's just using an embossing folder. But just sticking color on color, it allows you to add accents and then glue it onto a panel so the inside of your card is smooth, and then you have the ability to then just decorate this. Cutting out some alcohol ink hearts, again, layering those up, and then just using a sticker. I just love the accents. I love all of that gold. See, look how that gold just goes right on the edges. What a beautiful, beautiful card, right? So a great use for a background die to support another shape just by cutting that out. Right. Now, all of the makers, of course, they'll be linked not only on the maker page on timholtz.com, but there is a maker list for every launch. So you can click directly there if you want to go to their blog. And again, all of their photos will be linked to their social media. Please follow them, like, comment, engage, because there's so much excitement around these launches this year with both live and social makers. So Sharon created this panel. I love this. This is a vignette display panel. This is Ideology. It's that wood panel. All of these papers, because I needed to ask, because I said to Paul, I'm like, can you ask her, like, are these our papers? Because they look really good. These are Ideology backdrops that Sharon went in and used those hearts to cut out these hearts, put them on these tiles, and just went in and did all of that wonderful coloring and just mixed media magic. What a freaking great make, isn't it? Oh, I love it. It's like rainbow meets grunge, Sharon. I love it. Really, really cool. And then this, I love kind of the whole inset look of it. So if you can see here, there we go. It's still cut out. So she cut out the square. She used the bold text, cut out love you, right? But the background done in black, letters white, pushed back in there. So it's all flat. It's like an inlaid look. What another cool use for that bold text, especially in a mixed media element. So it's not just a raised word and it's not a recessed. It's actually completely the same level of these, right? But you have that inlay color and still using your paint, your collage mediums, ink, so you can just get that perfect grunge. What an awesome make for hearts. Just seeing the inspiration compared to just the die, you'd be like, what would I do with all those hearts? Well, hopefully just these 3 makes alone, and trust me, there's more on social to inspire. All right? Then, of course, in the whole Valentine realm, we just have, well, Valentine fun. Pure Valentine fun, especially with these colorized hearts. So this first one, this is Debbie Adams. So playful, so whimsy, so fun, so colorful, so Debbie. I love this accordion. I love the fact that it kind of has that cascade. You've got some sparkle. You've got a lot of fun elements going on. Here, that's that wing and Presley, if you guys remember those. If you look carefully in the background, there's the doily, right? Embossed. Love seeing that arrow go through. There's, just a lot of older dies where just Debbie just adds that little element. There's the tiny type, right? That was an alphanumeric. And I like how the hearts are just different colors. You can see that plaid used, right? Just die cut that just to give it some cool texture. There's that doily. This one is embossed. So rubbing some embossing ink over the top and then just doing some gold, layering with glitter, pattern paper. These were all the falling hearts. You've seen that background die, but it cuts a bazillion little hearts that you can drop in layer, which is cool. Here, there we go. We're connected there. Some metallic cardstock. So even on the colorize, right, you don't have to stack them all, because look at all these different size hearts you got because they're not all stacked. So you can layer 2 of them, you can layer 3 of them, you can do all the layering, or you can just leave them and use as the solid. So really fun, great card. Love the Valentine because it's just, again, so colorful and so vivid. But things don't always have to be colorful, right? Yuko created grunge. So if grunge is your jam, get your grunge on with these, right? Take the colorize, do a little vignette. There's a little key. Look at that grungy arrow going through all of those hearts. This is put in a vignette box, but look at the doily. Cut and put around the box. Again, just doing embossed paper, glue it on, do that inking technique. You can rub some crayon in there if you use collage medium. It just creates a whole great aesthetic. And then just add that little detail. Believe in yourself. So even if it's not Valentine related, it's just a great way. Hearts are always wonderful. I said we need to share love every day. So I like having these elements. And to me, that cool arrow, I just like it. It's a good grungy arrow, isn't it? Yeah, it's always like grunge perfection. I agree. It is cool. Yeah, Yuko always gets her grunge on. It's good to see. Now these, Jen created these. So, you know, Jen Shirkus, you know, she's a wild card sometimes. Sometimes it's like full on, you know, rainbow, and other times she got a little bit of a deeper, darker, grungy side. I love this. And I love these cards. Very mixed media. I like seeing that texture paste in the back, right? Little crackle on there. And then just going in using oxides and creating those backgrounds. Look at these hearts. We know that's Jen's color. So hearts don't always have to be pink and red. They don't have to be grungy. You can still utilize these to create some great cards. So this is just using that smaller heart, using a single one or stacking them. There's a little ideology label sticker. What great cards. Cool colors. So if you just like to do backgrounds, you don't want to do a lot of inking, stamping, any of that, just a great way to do it. I agree. Yeah, Tifa's like, they are, right? So cool to see how they're done. That's what I love about the makers. Everybody has something to contribute, and they do their thing, but they're just not afraid to just kind of play, right? And create. And we know that is definitely a Jen color, right? This one, just going to start at the top so you can see this. Sharon created this one. Look at the wood grain first, because I know there's a big, beautiful heart that you want to just feast your eyes on. But look at the background panel of this card. This is wood grain in action, okay? So the wood grain doesn't always have to be brown and grungy. It could be whatever colors you want. I love the tones of like the pumice in here and how light this is, but creating several of these. So this is what I always talk about when we say compartmental making, where you just sit down and you're going to make wood grain panels. You're going to sit down for an afternoon, an evening, an entire day, and you're just going to make wood panels, right? Because that's repetition. That's like, I don't have a creative idea. I don't feel like making a card or put anything together, but I can do a 1, 2, 3, 4 colorize and make panels, because then when you have them, look at that. You can lay them on a card front, you can trim them, trim the edges, and you create this wonderful wood background. I love that. It's like shiplap, just all that wood in there. And then of course, we have that colorized heart, a little bit of embossing on the front to give it some shine. The arrow in there, a little sparkle, right? Love the detail of the sparkle. But it's also nice because these other layers, these are not embossed. So I thought that was really cool to just emboss that front layer to give it some shine. And then of course, you pair that with a label sticker and you're good. But what a cool card. So this, of course, often, and this doesn't discredit any card ever, right? I think sometimes when I frame the card, it's like, he said to frame that one, but that's not frame worthy. Not true. I'm saying sometimes when you put a lot of work into things as a maker, at least I know that's how it is for me. You set out to make a card, right? Or it's an envelope, right? I've said this to Tifa many times. You make something, and by the time you're done, you're like, well, hold on. This went from a card to like, this is like art. This took me, 3 days, 4 days. This is easily frameable. So even if you wanted to create a card, it's often great if you found a frame and send that with the frame. So they could frame it afterwards, or still frame it and then just take the back of the card and stick it on the back of the frame with your sentiment. So always keep that in mind when you're making, because sometimes I think as makers, we even talk ourselves out of going that extra step because it's just a card. No, it's a make. So that make could be whatever it is you want. But beautiful inspiration for that die. And there's plenty more, I'm telling you. I just can't wait until you guys see all the amazing things. I think I'm just going to keep these here. Okay. Thanks. If you'll take that. Thanks. Sure. And I'll just take another one. It'd be great. Because I think what is really important about like understanding inspiration is that just because you see something in one way doesn't mean it doesn't have a whole lot of other different applications. And this one, guys, surprised me. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. This is Gladys, obviously, and you'll see that the two makers is Debbie and Anita that created it. Both of them created Gladys facing. Now, it's a die flip trick, meaning, you know, Gladys is cut this way, but if you reverse your cardstock when you're die cutting and you do a little inking, you can often fool the eye in making it look, because if you've die cut with Sizzix, really any thin dies, you know that the pressure of a die cut machine contours the edge of paper. So if you look at the back doesn't have the same look as the front. Well, often ink will take care of that. It creates that same little drop shadow to make it mimic. And it was just funny that two different makers had that idea of putting two on their card. But beyond that, you're going to even see things from the social makers where, well, it's not even a flamingo, if you can believe that. There you go. That's all I'm going to say about that. So this one from Debbie, a shakety shake. And you know I love a good shake. I really wish that I was more comfortable in making them, but I love this. I also love the use of the umbrella, right? Umbrella, this is, I think, from an old, I think this is probably a framelit set that went with Distinguished. I'm not sure. There's a little glitter heart in the back. I love seeing that heartfelt. So that heartfelt, that was just cut out of white. She probably used those hearts on that other card. And then there's some glitter paper behind it. A little shake in there. Birds of a feather belong together. Won't you be my Valentine? A lot of pun on words too, which is you'll see from Anita's. But how cute is that? And I like the fact that little sunnies and the eyelashes. And speaking of eyelashes, like, take a look. Can you see those? Right? Debbie just went in and actually probably used, you know, some additional little fake eyelashes on there to really glam Gladys up even more. So little fake eyelashes, stick those on. That just takes it to a whole nother level. I love it. Great card. Anita created this when Mario and I read this. I think even with Paula, we just started saying this. You are flamazing, right? We love that. You are flamazing. Anita cut these out of felt. So this is Gladys cut out of felt. I love the bows, the hearts, the inky background, the little sunset, right? And I just love the texture that the felt creates. You're going to see that having texture on your cards or just your makes is really cool. But I love the palette. I like the detail that, you know, even if you're doing something like the base of Gladys, it doesn't always have to be felt. You can still have a foundation of cardstock, and then you can cut certain elements out of felt, and then you can go back to cardstock, right? Because sometimes not everything works with felt, and sometimes you want just that little bit of added texture to a make, but you are flamazing. This card is flamazing, right? It's so good. I love the decal trimmer around the edge, right? So if you're looking for that extra edge, don't forget the tonic decal trimmer. It really adds a great detail, especially if you're inking, because that deckled edge will always take a little bit more ink than just regular cutting paper. But yeah, Gladys.
Everybody loves flamingos.
It's just good. They're so cute. So even if you're not into flamingos, like you look at this, you're like, dang.
How can you not be into Gladys?
Well,
she's flamazing.
She's flamazing. And wait till you see the flamazing social makes too, because there's Gladys, there's not Gladys, and well, it's very, very cool. All right. So next up, let's keep going with just card ideas. I mean, that's the thing. You're going to see some things are Valentine's, but there's a lot of card ideas. So take a look at this, right? Look at this stack. These are all from Jen, right? Jen created and sent these. So thanks, Jen, for sending all of this, because this really proves a great point about that bold text die set. So, you know, even though she only needed to send in one card, when I got all of these, I'd sit tomorrow and go, this makes me so freaking happy to see, because so this is what it is. You create a background, right? Whatever your medium is, inks, paint, doesn't really matter, right? Create your background. Die cut that. You can add another sticker, sentiment, sequence. You can die cut those panels. But as I said, you've got the negative to make another card, right? You've got those beautiful color letters because everything is still cut out. Even the center of the A, as I mentioned, is still cut out. Even though it drops out, you've got those cards. Or happy birthday to you, right? Or creating Thank you so much. I mean, look at those colors for both. You know, both are just equally amazing cards. And I love the idea of being able to create these pieces. Even if you wanted to work on craft, right, you get a whole different effect. It's just really great to look at these cards and see that positive and negative just being used. I think the concept was brilliant, especially in repetition. I say to makers that it's always great when you're looking at that. Are you looking for something? Okay. It's always cool, I think, as makers when you're looking for an idea and you think sometimes like, oh, that idea, oh, I've already done that. Yeah, but repetition is a great thing because you can sit down and just make all of these cards in advance and you have them. That's the thing about bold text, and you'll see even in the next set that comes out later this year, they're just great sentiments that you can use for a variety of things, right? Whether it's thanks or just best day ever or birthday, make a wish. I mean, it could just be any type of celebration, because I even think like a lot of times people think make a wish is really about birthday. I think make a wish is about so many different things. It is about, you know, graduation or promotion or anything, or even people that are just struggling. It's like, you know, here, just make a wish, like believe in that dream and follow it. So to me, that always has even deeper meaning than just for a birthday. Beautiful cards, right? So good. So good. Then we'll take a look at this card from Keisha. I love just the beauty in the color. There's that doily background, right? Inked and then just faded out to that clean edge, right? So just by adding that little color, even when you're going from dark to light, I love the fade. And then you see just those letters. So even if you're not into the dropout, let's just say you're not into the whole knockout effect, you're like, I'm not that kind of maker. The fact that you can cut out a sentiment at one time and use all those letters, treat it that way, which is what Keisha did here, because you've got those stacked letters to do love you, and then you add that little heart. And I love that there's many layers on that card. Very cool, because those stacked layers, by adding those letters, really help stand out from that beautiful texture of the doily. You like to say that too, right, Mario? Doily. Yes, doily. He's going to say doily and flamazing, I'm sure, all day, right? Two cute little cards that Paula created, again, using a background, but this is a great idea about that if you like to make mini cards, because I've always said cards don't have to be this standard size. I know there's, you know, A2s and slimlines and all these specific sizes, but if you just want to make for the sake of making, no one, especially the people that we give them to, really don't care about the scale of the card. I like little cards. I like funky cards. I like just wonky different sizes, but this is about creating a background and embossing it, there's a doily, and cutting it and using it for two different cards, two different small cards. Use those words, right? Even if you don't want to use the whole sentiment, you've got hello and love. So if you have alphanumeric, you can do that. But the nice thing about bold text is that it actually changes in font scale. So it's still going to fit the width of that. Does that make sense? Meaning if you did bold text and you did love, it would be a lot smaller. But because bold text is sized for the same width, one word is going to fill up the same amount of space. So that's another great thing about those dies, is that you can utilize them. If you're doing a specific size card, you know that whatever words you're going to put will always fill up the same space. Hope that makes sense, because these are the knockouts from those. Same font, but different scale, because they came out of bold text. But beautiful. I love the coloring, right? Because sometimes, you know, when you do a lot of coloring, you do embossing, you lose it, but not with 3D. And it just shows that texture in the doily. So good.
That is amazing.
It's beautiful.
Get that on
Yeah,
paper? Wow.
it's beautiful. It is. So speaking of beautiful, let's talk about this particular folder, because this damask folder, like I said, is unbelievable. Stacy created this card, and look at all that coloring. Because it has so much texture, by adding your inks and oxides and all of that, you really get some great texture holding on to that color, especially in this area here. So there is the card. I love that little emboss. This is a switchlet, right? Beautiful little vellum circle with the switchlet. Again, adding any of your older dies, right? It doesn't have to be all from the same. It could be a branch, a twig, a flower, but look at what a folder can do for a card, especially if you love to ink. Throw different colors on there and see how that paper reacts. And some people like to ink and then emboss, and some people like to emboss and then ink, because if you emboss and then ink, the ink is going to pull up in very unpredictable places, which I think is often fun. But what a stunning card. It really just shows, hopefully you can see from utilizing this, that ripple that I was talking about, that effect in that, and how it holds on to the mediums and creates that shadow. Oh, freaking good, right? So good. And then if you even wanted to do like a little shabby, right? Keep in mind that just because the folder is this way doesn't mean you can't create a card this way, because that pattern is still beautiful this way, right? It could be horizontal or vertical. Paula created this card, just a light inking over the top. Just by adding some color, it's really picking up a lot of cool elements, right? Adding some little flowers, some little stickers. So even if you don't want to do a lot of inking and you just want to do a little bit of ink blending over there, the Distress blending brushes are really nice because it just kind of hits the high points. It's kind of a wispy way to add some ink. But what a beautiful card, little ideology bouquet, a little bit of sparkle, but great for a wedding card, right? Just a very beautiful sophistication. And then when Paul was making, she was showing that, I'm like, you know, I really hope that there's some cards without any ink on them, because I think, you know, sometimes when we show a lot of makes, and I know that the makers love ink, well, because, well, they're makers, right? We love ink. But a lot of times the whole point of a design is the beauty of the design itself. So thanks, Paula, for making these cards. She's like, I threw in some extra cards. Just showing that taking white cardstock and that beautiful folder, you can add, that's a little metallic, right? So that's a little metallic craft stock that she sanded to create that little scuff over the top, some ideology stickers, but look at it over that Sizzix folder. Just beautiful. So when you're creating this, whether you want to create Valentine's or weddings or announcements or even thank yous from something, the sophistication of this particular folder is absolutely beautiful, because every part of it is what is magical, right? It's not like, oh, that's going to kind of be a dud. And it's not a repeat either, right? So you take a look at quilted, wherever you cut it, it's still going to look like quilted. But on a folder like this, you really get two distinctly different designs depending on where you're cutting that pattern from. You guys see that? You see that it's the pattern if I put it together. Anyway, just very cool to see that 3D damask, right? Beautiful. Awesome. Love those. Okay. Then we will keep going. We're going to get into a little springtime, right? We're going to get into a little springy. And this one, well, it just made me happy. Jen created this. Look at the Papercut chicks. Now, you saw on the package they were just yellow, but I love the whole little rainbow of these. This is where it's candy and fun. And, well, Jen, I love this. Just using some Distress ink to create those backgrounds, adding a little touch of glitter. I love the clouds inked in the background. Those little dots, what a cute little stamp of those little green dots. And believe in daydreams. Isn't that such, it's just so stinking cute. So cute. I love the look of this. So the nice thing, of course, about the Papercut chicks, as I mentioned, is they're facing different directions and they have different body proportions. So that's the other nice thing. You don't have to necessarily do that flip like we saw with Gladys. It's just a cute way to do this. So if you looked at that and you're like, hey, that kind of looks like a farm card, I'm not into that, I hope this make alone will show you that it is the perfect thing for spring or Easter, and such a clever way to use all of those colors. I know, I agree, Julie. Rainbow chicks. So cute, right? Right, Kathy? There's a lot of cuteness going on. There is a lot of cuteness and ideas too, because the whole thing about Easter and spring, it's just it's happy time. It is, it's cute. So we're going to show some of the samples using Papercut chicks, and then you're going to see some bunny games, because they do work together. Even though stylistically they're different, they really complement each other. So both of these cards Anita created, but I just want to point out like a really clever thing. Now, Anita, I don't know if this was your intention, but I'm just going to tell you what I think, and for better or for worse, because I loved the use of doily right here, but to me it looked like cabbage or lettuce. It kind of looked Eastery. I'm not sure if that's what you're going for, but I thought it was absolutely really, it just kind of took me to the garden. So I just saw these guys like playing in the garden with like the cabbage or leaves. I don't know if that was your thing, but I love that. So Anita created these, and you'll see there's some bunny games. This little guy hiding behind the egg, that's the cute part of that one die where it's just the head and the little paws. Cutting out the egg. So of course this is the egg from Papercut Chick, but I love the scale of it going with that. We see that foundation, there's a little flowers, and there's the chick in there, and I love the little banner right there from Bunny Games. Really, really cute, right? And taking the same idea, oh good, Lettuce Hill look. Whew, thank goodness. It's cute. It's so clever. It really is. And then I love seeing the other cards. So again, taking the same concept when you're cutting it out and using the components. So she used this bunny and that from Bunny Games, this chick and this from Papercut Chicks, right? And then your other elements you can just make two of when you're doing it and create two different cards. So depending on your style of making, you can really get a lot out of your making session. I love the idea. Isn't that cute? It's so fun to see. It's so fun to see like how people take a design and just make it their own.
And make it amazing.
Well, there you go. Mario is definitely going to go with that. That is. So Keisha created this. I love seeing so many different textures coming together. So if you look back here, right, you can see that is the plaid that's just cut out into an egg shape. I love that little alphanumeric, that tall text for bunny, and then little kisses added there. I love the detail of those little flowers on the text because it really draws your eyes to bunny kisses. So cute. And then just the eggs where the background is colored and then it's layered with that white layer and that little bunny there in the corner. Isn't he cute? I mean, Keisha's such a cute card. I love that. Just a little bit of metallic on there. A great use for texture and pattern because you see all the different line play in there and how just adding that other element really brings your eye over here but still adds texture. This doesn't just fall flat. I love it. Just see, so many ideas. So many ideas. And then, of course, you know, when you're looking at texture, because I think texture is important, you can utilize texture for many different things. So Stacy created these little tags. Now, this is, again, using other elements. So you take that plaid in the background and it's bold. Like I told you, it's really strong pattern. That is a great pattern that plays with a lot of other things. This was the Christmas die from last year. One of the folks, I don't really know what it's called. I forget already. But it is, like my mind went totally blank on this. I'm sure someone, because Stacey loves this one, I know. It's the one I think, yeah, I don't know, like Funky Nordic or something. It might be. I have no idea. Could be. But I love seeing those birds just used. Now, could this be for the holidays? Absolutely. Could this just be because you like the stylistic to create little note cards? Absolutely. Because another thing as a maker.
Yes, Funky Nordic.
Oh, see? It was back there, tucked in the back of my brain. And I love seeing those switchlets used in the background. Remember as makers that not everybody is a maker. So sometimes just making a set of cards that you can gift to a friend or a neighbor that are blank that they can use for thank you cards or gift tags or note cards is always really good. It doesn't always have to be about a specific season. If you're into making, even if you don't want to make for that season because you don't send Easter cards or spring, you can still utilize these to gift to people and use them. I just thought it's very cool to see how these things are used in many, many different ways. And then of course, just Debbie Adams just shocks me when I see this because, you know, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I'll get a make and I'm like, oop, I don't think that was mine. And then I look and it's like, yep, that's Debbie. So here's Bunny Games, Debbie style. Not using the pieces, you don't have to, right? If you have the talent to draw and sketch and do little faces, that's just what she did. She created these, she turned the heads, she put them in a little basket, right? She flipped the ears down, those little carrots that are just used, those are the pieces from the daisy. And then she did the eggs as balloons, little hot air balloon. And there's that little pennant that even if you don't want to add the paper layer over the top, you can just go in and ink. So that's the beauty, of course, as a maker, is that you can go in and take the components of that and utilize the components or pick and choose what components and how you want to use that, right? Meaning in this case, ink the egg, add the white layer. Have a white egg, do an ink layer, right? Have those little flowers over the top and look at all these the little threads just to create that basket. There's a little intertwine 3D folder on there. It's just really, really charming, incorporating a stamp. That's the thing to just remember when it comes to making. Sometimes you see stuff and you're like, okay, I don't really like the face, or I don't really like the size of the eyes. And some people use googly eyes. Like, you can do whatever it is you want to do. Don't limit yourself just because it's from the die set and you think you have to use those pieces. You do you. That is the power of a maker, to do you. So this one, and Kathy left a message on it. She goes, you're going to love the outside. I don't know about the inside. I love both, Kathy. So first, take a look at the outside. There is quilted put onto vignette box to make it look like a trunk, right? There's some hardware on there, but take a look at the effect of that 3D folder where it just looks like this has been covered in leather. It's just a wood box. Could be a paper mache, could be any kind of box you want to do, but what a great job on that, Kathy, on these. The boxes alone, just from the trunk, just really cool. Then on the inside, well, look at that little scene. Look at that little bunny scene inside the vignettes. There's some moss in there, some little wood slices from Christmas, and just have the cutest little bunnies on an Easter egg hunt, right? I love that. I think the idea, it's all about just clever uses for the elements in a die and using what you have and using older stuff, right? Funky foliage popped in there just because you wanted to add some layers. I love the fact of these little half eggs, right? So they're just popping up out of the ground. Really cute. Again, that little curled ear. That's another great detail. That's a thing to remember about making, is that you can create, if you're not a card maker, you want to make tags, you want to make thank yous, you want to make something for framed, or you want to do something dimensional, you can always do that with dies, because I think that telling your story creatively, that's the power of the maker. It really is. Just really cute. And yeah, bunny games. You can see from this that they can get into a lot of mischievous things, and of course they can take their little partners, the Papercut chicks, with them as well. Just amazing. It's just so cool. It's so cool to see. But then, of course, it just doesn't end, because if you're looking at all this, you're like, okay, Tim, but you're still like, you know, pastel eggs and all that. Well, Yuko's got you covered, because she did this vignette. So first I'm just going to show that this just started as just a vignette. This is the divided drawer. Even though it's wood, adding that wood grain colorized, look at that. It just completely transforms that box into something really cool and really textural. So using those panels, a little bit of crackle to cover the seams, right? That makes just perfect grunge. And then look at this grungy Easter party going on, right? We've got the Papercut chicks. There's a little Easter in the tall text. I love just seeing that little pennant right there. There's another little piece back there. Intertwined to create the basket. There's some eggs for Papercut chick. Look at all those eggs just stacked up. I love that the legs were cut off of this one and kind of stuck down into that little nest. And there's the bunnies with bunny games. So very cool, very shabby. That's what I like. That if you love the look of vintage, right? You're going into vintage distress. Just seeing these two, especially, you know, between Keisha and Yuko, just having that clean look or the grungy look. That's the versatility of a shape. Really anything, whether it's a Sizzix die or a folder. What mediums you use, whether it's your inks or paints, and what style you like, you can create your own theme. That cute? So much great detail, right? Grungy like that. That little speckled egg with that texture on there. Yeah, that's everything right there. Those little nuggets of goodness. Beautiful, shabby good. All right. So let me move these aside. We still have some more samples to go in just to share with you, because there's some cool stuff. There's still a few other dies to take in and show. All right. Anita created this. Anita was clearly channeling green. I love the background, because I love that she also used that impresslet of that clover with the little good luck. But there's our watercolor bird standing on the egg, right? And you can see just from those layers of cardstock how he really pops from that green. I certainly like seeing that damascene green, a little teal. Just what a vibrant, beautiful card. The egg that's in there, and I didn't really know what to do with the egg, to be honest, and I didn't even think of him standing on it. So I love that. Really cool. The nice thing about this die, and you'll see from the other makes as well, is that you can still achieve a very cool effect whether you're doing colors of cardstock or if you're going to do watercolor or ink. But just a really pretty card. I love the good luck on that. Nita. From a mixed media or watercolor, Sharon created this. So this is where we start seeing just different mediums used on this die. You don't have to, remember that, but you certainly can. If you have paints or gessos, you can do many things. You can paint the pieces first or assemble it. Just assemble it out of whatever cardstock, white cardstock, craft, and then go in with your brush and start painting, right? Actually go in and add it. So always remember that when it comes to colorize. You can use color cardstock, you can color the papers first and then cut, or you can cut and build in white and then go in and just add any of your painting details. But I love this, the coloring that Sharon created. I love the eggs in there. And take a look at this. You guys see that nest? That's the plaid background, just chopped up. what a clever use for that background die, and just cut up. We've seen so many different uses, right? From how Debbie used a piece of it for the heart, and Keisha used some for the egg, and now this chopped up for the nest. So many possibilities. And then just hello. So even if you don't want hello there, you can just do hello, cut that piece, cut it into a strip, and layer it onto a card. But what a great artistic use for that die, because as I mentioned, it's a big bird. You need to know, like, from a card, he's a big guy, because I do want a statement piece that not only for a card, but if you were doing any type of art journal or you wanted something substantial for home decor, that bird really allowed it. And plus it allowed us to get, I think, a lot more texture and detail in that simplicity of cutting that out and adding the layers. Now Stacy created this. Look at this tag, right? You can tell there's our stick, but look at that. Look at those beautiful colors of that bird and all of the wonderful tatteredness, Stacy, with the vintage buttons and the little lace, right? Little magpie just going and gathering all these things. There's a stick and a twig, those little branches coming up. And the foundation of this one is an etc. tag, right? So you have that foundation where it can hang on the wall, it can go on an easel, because the etc. is just going to be that thicker substrate, right? Using a little mummy cloth. That's why you stock up on mummy cloth at Halloween, because it's the only time it comes out, because, well, oh my gosh, it's the greatest stuff. And then we've got ribbon there, stitched around the paper before you glue that onto the etc. tag. But what a beautiful, beautiful bird. It's interesting how both makers just channel kind of those warm tones, but it really adds that beautiful contrast over the backgrounds. Stunning, isn't it? So good, right? You look at that die at first, you're like, I don't really know about the bird. And then hopefully you see it and you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. This card is also made by Stacy. I love seeing that quilted in the background, but not so much for the leatherness, right? Meaning the browns that I've done. I just think it adds such a beautiful texture and dynamic to this. Seeing that colorized wood grain, just using one, so it just looks like a tree trunk. I think that's great. And then the funky foliage in there and all the different colors always take the scenic route. So again, I love, dies playing into other dies. That is the important thing. It's investments. When you talk about dies and stamps and inks, all of our creative supplies, they're investments, and always getting those ideas to remember. And that's the other thing as a maker. If you've got some sort of inspiration board or memo board, you want to remember this one, because if you like to make for fall, you're going to want to, you might forget dies from February that really work into fall, where you're like, oh, that was a good one. Or maybe you want to do this at Christmas time because you're going to do some sort of, lumberjack vibe. Those little details are to remind us not forgetting, all the other components that we have. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, about all the other components we have from a die perspective. And I think this make also plays into it. Jen created this. Look at that, right? Jen Shirkus, she loves the beach, loves the ocean. But I loved seeing how that wood grain played into that. Now, a lot of these are older dies, right? The sand dollar, that font that we did from the Biggs XL, but that's okay. Use what you have, use the elements. You can utilize doily pieces or any of the dies. I just think that this has such a great vibe to it. And taking structures like the ideology, this is the same divided drawer that Yuko did, but you can take all that stuff out. You don't have to use the inside. You can use the outside as a panel because it sits up great, right? On a table, it could hang on the wall. And I like the fact that it's a box, so it has dimension. It's not flat. So often when you do vignettes, if you're not into the whole assemblage of it, all the little trinkety bits that I call it, vignettes are really great as a foundation for creating because they're lightweight, they're hollow, they're easy to sit up or hang on a wall. And what a great use for your dies, right? Wouldn't think of wood grain on the beach, but of course, Jen would, right? I would just look at wood grain and it's like wood grain, but so many cool ideas for, taking the bird into the organic, going into the tree and then going into that. And that's really what I want to talk about, is about dies, because dies are important. Dies are important to remember that even though we have newness, and we love newness. I love newness. It's always great to have new stuff. And I say this every time. You don't want to forget what's in the toy box. And I was inspired. And this is probably going to shock people, but probably no more than Kathy Cowles, who said, she left a note. She's like, I know you love the box, but I apologize for what's inside because you're not. I don't know, Kathy. I was inspired to make myself because I loved one of the little characters. And I think that sometimes people think that I just say stuff, you know, like, oh, he's just telling us he likes cutesy because he wants to sell us a rabbit. No, when I see something and it just makes me happy, I'm going to do it. There's something about it. So I was inspired to make, and I made all these last night. I'm not going to lie. I made them all last night because after I saw the makes and I was able to see what all the makers made, right? All the makers made amazing things, but I'm like, there's something about this bunny that I love that I think is beyond Easter. He's just a cute rabbit. So of course, the first thing, and all of my cards are similar in the style or nature, but I just wanted to create different looks, okay? So here's our first one. The first one, I just wanted to do a tattered bunny. Now, I love the idea of creating something that's a little different, a little wonky. I love a good splatter. The cardstock, I cut the text out of brown, layered it on white, did a little splatter. When I do felt, now I don't know how people, I like to use Sizzix felt, but I stick felt on cardstock, right? That's what I always do. Mario, would you mind, in the closet, on the very bottom, on your right, in the second box over, you're going to see a little Ziploc bag of some cutout felt pieces. Thanks, that I use for bunny. It's like a little zip. This is how I do it because felt to me is finicky, okay? And when you cut felt, like I have pork chop fingers and I tend to shred it apart or tear it apart. Thanks. So here's what I do.
I'm just saying, this felt idea thing was brilliant.
Well, it's probably not mine, but this is what I did.
Brilliant.
So Sizzix has so many different colors of felt, and most of their felts match their cardstock. They probably do, but I just find a close match to the color. I run the cardstock through my Xyron to get sticky on it, and then I stick the felt to the cardstock. Okay, so it's like cardstock felt, you can see, and I don't really care about matchy-matchy, but I try to get it pretty on there. Then I just run the die through. I give it 2 passes, right? It's a thinlet, but a thinlet is still going to cut through this, the adhesive, and the cardstock with ease. By having the cardstock, to me, I get a cleaner cut, right? That's what I like about that. I don't have to worry about the phrase, and even all the little pieces, yes, it cuts cleanly on the little pieces. That's what I did. I don't know if there's something magical about this felt. It's very soft and fibrous, but it was a really clean cutting felt. And I did that for pieces, right? Even down to the little heart, even down to the little inside pieces of the ear. Yes, it still cuts clean, right? So it's always cardstock and felt. But I wanted it to be tattered, so I love the fact that it was, you know, missing an eye and just very well loved, right? That's the whole love you, because when you love something, you hold on to it forever. So even like, you know, a little tattered bunny. But it also got me thinking about what other dies are out there, and that's what this is about. Go in and find the things that you have. What are those things that you have? In this case, I wanted to do stitching. Now, of course I could do stitching. You could do a needle and thread. You can stitch that on there. But I'm like, I know I've done a die that has that, right? So all of these little media marks, there's a die here that cuts out little X's, cuts out little dots, it cuts out little lines, it cuts out little V's. So I just cut a strip of those little X's, right? That's what it is, just a positive. And I glued those little X's. Those are my stitches. That's what I wanted to do. You want a little bigger eye, you use one of the dots. And I just glued them down. So while it may look like stitching, it isn't. Because if I want paper to look like fabric and I want to cheat, here's my cheat. You just go buy some flocked cardstock. Felt is a little too fluffy, right? Regular cardstock, well, it's going to look like paper, but I wanted something that looks like thread. So this is just black flocked cardstock. You can see how clean it cuts, and then I just glued them on. So now when you look at those details, it really does look like thread that's on there, but it isn't. It's just paper and glue, okay? So I love that little guy for Love You. But then I just wanted to play, because bunny games, well, it's bunny games. So I wanted to do a little birthday card, right, with the bunny. How's this for cute? I changed up my colors of felt. I needed a birthday hat. Well, remember side orders? Gosh, these came out when I did the sidekick. They're little tiny dies that had a little folder. Sadly, they went away. I love them. But just because they're not there doesn't mean I'm not going to use them. So that little party hat, perfect for the bunny. That little balloon, perfect for there. There's the little pennant that comes with bunny games. And made a little birthday bunny because I thought that was fun. I wanted a little longer string, so instead of using the paper, I just actually used string, put that around. Got a little trick from Stacy that if you rub collage medium over string and let it dry, you can get it to do anything and stay that way. So that's why that string will stay that way because it's on there. But all I did here was just switch it up. So this is brown over white, white over brown. And I left under there neutral. So could you have made a shaker? Yes. For those shakety shakes, you can shake. Okay. I just didn't. But then I wanted to create something, well, just different. So what about hello there? Right? I thought he was cute. Wanted to give him a little mustache. Can you guys see a little mustache, a little umbrella? He was just fun. Well, what did I do? Went in, I'm like, okay, I got these guys, right? The Halloween hipsters. There's his little bowler hat. That's cute. There's a little mustache. That's also really cute. There we go. You can see I left a little bit of his mouth showing, just so. I wanted a little bow tie. Well, it's on there too. There's that little bow tie. What is he going to hold on to? Well, I don't know. I want him to hold on to something. So, well, went from last year to the park. There's a little umbrella. Perfect. Cut that out. So it's just about going in and utilizing stuff. If I was going to do Christmas, well, I probably would have taken a little winter hat, and you can put that on the bunny. There's so many dies that you probably have that will work with what's there. That's the whole point of this. And then I just wanted to create something, well, just cute. So this is just focus on the good. And I love the idea of focus. And so I made her and just gave her big glasses. Again, from the hipster, there's the glasses from that, right? Her bow, that's his bow, because this one came with a big bow tie and a small one. So there's the bow in her hair. And I just love that. The daisies that come with the set, I just wanted to do stems. Well, I had this die on the table. No, it wasn't this die. Sorry, this die. Because this die had too much curve. I was going to use a little balloon string, but then it would look like wilted flowers. So I just took the edge of this kite, because I had that die, and I'm like, oh, there you go. That's a little stem. And those were the stems of the daisy. And all the greens and the flowers, well, that came with the die. But this was focus on the good. Again, just something different to remind you that when you see something new or you get something new, don't just use it once and put it away. Remember what you have. The index on timholtz.com, again, thanks Neil and Zoe. The index is a great way to keep track of what you have. It's also a great way if you don't want to go into your creative space and sort through everything, go into the index, click on Sizzix, click on your inventory if you've done it, and you can see what you have. And that's going to allow you to be like, oh, that die, that die. It's a great way to kind of brainstorm and utilize the designs of what you can do with that, right? Because maybe it's not Easter, but these little bunnies, whether you're into distress, whether you want to do birthday, whether you want to just dress them up a little dapper or just make her adorable, like that's just cute, because that's what I wanted to do. And repetition, right? I say that to the makers and I do it myself. The foundation of that is simple, because I wanted to focus my energy on the little details of that. So it was very easy then, once you made these little bunnies, to be like, oh, 4 different cards. I don't have to reimagine what setting I'm going to put them in. So that's the thing that is important to remember, not only about the dies, but also about the purpose of the index, because I think that's, you know, it's an easy way at a glance, so we know as makers kind of what we have. But there's a lot of stuff in this chapter. You can see, I'm going to kind of put all this stuff down just to show you that this right here is just a snippet of the inspiration, like a snippet. There's only a handful of makers that made for live, and a ton of makers that made for social. We're just starting the inspiration. We're starting the party, and I think that to me is what, I don't know, that's what makes me really, really happy. I think that's the coolest part.